Hey, everybody. Sorry, give me 1 second. I'm just trying to get the slides up.
No problem at all.
It doesn't seem, I'm on a single screen, so it seems like there's not a way I can share the full thing without losing you guys. So,
And while we're waiting too, if everybody wants to say where they're from in the chat and maybe a LinkedIn profile or contact info for some networking, I think that'd be great. Oh, you're trying to do present mode?
yeah, I was trying to do present mode without making it take up the whole screen so I can still see you guys in the chat and notes and everything. Is this too distracting for you guys? Is this okay if it stays like this?
No, I think it's perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
That works.
Okay, awesome. Great. Well, I think we can get started. My name is Katelyn Bailey, and I'm giving this presentation along with Emily Cranston. So happy to be here. Thank you guys for having us. We both work at Mandiant FireEye. We're just talking to Courtney before this about the divestiture, and we'll be with Mandiant. So we're at FireEye Mandiant. Courtney, is there anything you want to say before we get started?
Nope, just a reminder about registering for the Capture the Flag, and I'll go ahead and put a link to that in the chat so everyone has access to that. We'd love to see everyone come out, even if it's just part of the day. We also have training tomorrow as well, a whole lineup.
Awesome, sounds great. So I'll quickly run through the agenda and then I'm going to pass it over to Emily. We'll do introductions and then we'll get into the presentation. So today we are going to walk through, get a little bit deeper of a dive into what cyber threat intelligence is. We'll start with what intelligence is itself to lay the groundwork, and then talk about CTI specifically and why it's valuable and how people use it and who uses it and everything about that. And then we're going to go into some of the specific processes and frameworks that actually exist in the industry, so you get an understanding of how it's applied and how practitioners who use this leverage frameworks every day to make the work that they're doing more actionable and more digestible for decision makers. And then we're going to have a discussion with you guys about what skills from our experience are necessary or advantageous to be successful in the space, both technical hard skills and soft skills too. And then we're going to open it up to you all, and please feel free to ask any questions that you can, because we're here for you guys. So over to you, Emily, if you want to introduce yourself before we get started.
Sure, thanks, Katelyn, and hi, everyone. My name is Emily Cranston. I'm a principal analyst with Mandiant Intelligence. I will have been with Mandiant for 5 years at the end of October. I tend to specialize more in the strategic intelligence realm, which Katelyn will give you an overview of what that means in a little bit. And I also have a focus on Chinese espionage activity.
Awesome. Am I? Okay, unmuted. Thank you. And as I've said, my name is Katelyn Bailey. I'm a senior manager at Mandiant. I have been at the company for 3.5 years now. I formerly was an analyst myself on site with a client, and now I manage our federal civilian side of the house within our strategic intelligence and government team, managing embedded analysts. And it's a pleasure to be here. Great, so we will get started. We're going to talk about first, as I mentioned, what intelligence is and what threat intelligence is before we dive into CTI specifically. So at its core, intelligence is about providing actionable information, and it needs to be relevant and it needs to be timely, because the goal is to assist decision makers and consumers of this intelligence to do a better job, whatever that job is. And we'll talk a little bit later about who's actually leveraging this intel and how and why. But intelligence is designed to reduce uncertainty, and it should be providing value and have an impact on the organization in some way. So before we go any further, I just want to reiterate that it's important to remember that it's about answering questions. And so that also means knowing who is asking the questions, or even if they're not asking, who is your audience for the intelligence that you're producing or you're researching and writing. So as cybersecurity practitioners, you need to be aware that the decisions you're making, what you're producing is going to ideally, the end result is impacting decisions that are being made, and it should be off of the best available information that you have. So CTI exists to give anybody who needs to make security decisions the capability to make informed ones. And in turn, those decisions should yield risk mitigation for the organization. Diving into what cyber threat intelligence is, we're still applying all of those principles from the above, from the previous slide and those bullets, but gets a bit more specific when we start to talk about the adversaries and their motives and their intent and the capabilities, what environments enable them, and the operations that they use and leverage. So CTI, examining that definition that you see there, I don't want to basically just read it off, but I don't want to read the whole thing. Diving in a little bit, I want to focus on evidence-based knowledge of the adversaries. That's extremely important because you want to make sure as cyber threat intelligence practitioners that you're leveraging or using or producing intelligence that has been logically constructed and analyzed, and that you're providing insight on threat actor groups that are behind the activity. So essentially that you're not just, it's evidence-based knowledge, but it's not just facts. So you're not just stating X happened to Y, but it's X happened to Y, and we assess that this is because of Z motivation or this new government mandate or this reorg or new directive from this nation state, or some new geopolitical or regional activity, et cetera. You get where I'm going there. So the importance of evidence-based is that it implies it's a repeatable process. It's something where we can take facts, and we're using that to then accurately measure and then assess the information that we have gathered on this specific topic from a whole host of different sources to then try to assess or determine an outcome. So that's essentially the assessment piece. It's not just fact. And CTI should offer a better understanding of the threats against business operations. So looking at adversaries about why they're doing it, their motivations, what they're doing, that's the intentions, and how they do it, the capabilities, their enabling environment and operations, along with a whole host of TTPs. You'll hear that term, that's tactics, techniques, and procedures. And if you were on our last presentation, I apologize, some of that might be, that's gonna be old information for you, but I'm gonna repeat it for anybody who's new here. Anyway, and the last piece that I wanna highlight is the decision advantage. As I mentioned just previously, CTI is existing to give anybody who is making decisions the capability to make more informed ones. And that's the decision advantage. So the decisions that they're making in turn are yielding risk mitigation for the organization, and it's based on the evidence-based knowledge and assessments that you're providing as an analyst or a CTI practitioner. If you dialed into our call back in July, this is going to be an image that you saw previously, but it is important to reiterate here because I think it does a really good job displaying and visualizing some of the information overlap that's shared between the different type levels of CTI. So cyber threat intelligence is obviously a broad term and encompasses a lot of different types of work and information. But in the industry, we sort of break it down into 3 different types of CTI. So there's strategic cyber intelligence, there's operational intelligence, as well as tactical intelligence. And cyber is meant to sort of portray and display a holistic understanding of current and future threats that encompasses actors, their trends, threats based on industry or geography, and it may come from a variety of sources. Whereas operational intelligence is insights on the capabilities and the tactics, techniques, and procedures, motivations of the actors, a mix of technical and contextual. And so you can see sort of some of the arrows are talking about, there's information that may come from, for example, historical trending and emerging threats from the strategic information can also inform some of the operational intelligence, and some of your knowledge of adversary TTPs may inform some of the strategic reports that you're producing, et cetera. And then last, tactical intelligence is the compilation of indicators of compromise and other technical analysis or technical details that will provide organizations, your organization, say you're working with, the knowledge and capability to detect and then stop those threats. So it can go either way. I worked from strategic to tactical, but if your mind moves the other way, that's okay too. But all three categories are extremely important and make up the sort of industry that is cyber threat intelligence. So using those definitions, I want to quickly look to the next slide, some examples of applying our topic here of hack the airport, cyber threat intelligence, and threats to airports, and apply the CTI model that we just talked about here. So say you were an analyst and either you were assigned to work on a cyber threat profile for an airline or an airport, or maybe you work at an airport and you're on the intel team and the CTI team, and you got to start somewhere. And so you're going to build out a sort of holistic cyber threat profile. And so to do so, you have to address and leverage all the information that you have at your fingertips, and you don't want to miss anything. So you're going to look at both the strategic, operational, and tactical elements. So you can see here on the slide, there's sort of three separate clusters of questions that get at what you might, as a CTI analyst, seek to address for the decision maker that you're producing this cyber threat profile for, or maybe you're just doing it to get a start for your team to make sure you're not missing anything, and you know exactly where you want to focus your resources. So now that you leverage your knowledge of the strategic, tactical, and operational intel, and use these questions that you're asking to build out this threat landscape. You can see in the first bucket of blue, you may want to start to address the questions broadly that face the airline industry, and also based on your geographical location. If you dialed into the call back in July, you'll remember, I believe it was Emily talked about that airlines and airports are definitely attractive target for a whole host of different actors. That includes espionage actors that could steal information to support intelligence gathering or collection operations that they have, or potentially they want inside information on mergers or acquisitions, or some proprietary intelligence on airline or even airplane plans. There's also cyber criminal actors that may target a large amount of customer or payment data, financial data. There's a ton of PII. Think about when you book yourself, if you've ever booked a ticket to fly anywhere, they have everything essentially, especially if you're going international as well. Or they may, in going on to additional actors, it could be actors looking to engage in extortion, with stolen data, or leverage ransomware, or denial of service attacks, or in some way, some actor financially motivated looking to monetize stolen information. Also, still within the strategic portion of this cyber threat profile, you may realize based on your region that you could be subjected to other specific target sets or actor sets that are interested based on geopolitics or wherever you're located. If you're at an airport in Taiwan or Cambodia, for example, you may specifically want to look at actors that are suspected to be associated with PRC. If you're in Israel, for example, you may focus on Iranian actor sets or make sure that you highlight those in the cyber threat profile. If you're in the US, if you recall, Emily briefed last month about temp isotope, which is a suspected Russian actor set. You may want to focus on, make sure that you cover at least Russian actor sets. So now your cyber threat profile has threats that are specific based on the airport industry and based on your geography. You've gone about discussing sort of the who and a little bit of the why at that strategic high level. But now that might be good that may be enough if you had to brief C-suite staff and form high level decisions, but that's not going to complete the picture for your CTI team or your end customer. It's not going to help the airport's intel team or network defense team in knowing what they actually need to be prepared for. So then you moving into the yellow section, you're looking to address a little bit more specific, and that's this operational category that we're getting at. So how do these actors target their victims? What are their TTPs, the tactics, techniques, and procedures that they leverage? And then if they did leverage that against your organization or the organization you are producing this threat profile for, what would that impact be? So you already looked at the specific actors and the who, but now this is about the how. Like I just mentioned last month, Emily talked about temp isotopes compromise. So in this section, you might flesh out details of temp isotopes, TTPs, for example, their use of strategic web compromise belonging to the San Fran airport. And the goal was to steal passwords via SMB. So this would include discussing both the operational impact and then how they did that. So if you flesh all of that out, the cyber threat profile is looking really good. Got the detailed description of the actors, the who, and sort of the why. And then in the operational section, you've talked about the how. But the last thing that's missing here is the actual hard technical IOCs to ensure that your network defenders or your end customer who will be using this information to make informed decisions, do resource allocation, and use this information can actually defend against this actor set or whole host of actor sets to ensure they're protected. So that includes providing the MD5s or IP addresses or email addresses or any other technical information associated with the clusters of actor sets that you've determined are most likely to target your airline or airport or end customer that you're producing this threat profile for. Really quick, this ties right into what we just talked about, but in those three buckets that you saw in the blue, yellow, and green, strategic, operational, and tactical, you can also think about it in terms of who's going to use the information. So the strategic reporting provides high-level analysis of the technologies and trends and threats and actors, and that it can be used at the very operational level to provide situational awareness and understanding, but that will most often be used to make strategic decisions by executives or board of directors at the CISO or CISO level. It may be about resource allocation, or it may be about when or when not to engage law enforcement, or when you need to call in a third-party incident responder. Whereas operational intelligence can be leveraged by organizations to do some prioritization of resources based on your understanding of the actual threats and then the impact of those threats. And so this could be used for preventative practices, countermeasures, if there is an incident, doing hunts and sweeps across a network to look for activity. Understanding how they behave helps then identify and counter that activity. And then last, the technical intelligence will most likely, because it is the technical details that are supporting detections and prevention and response to the threats, it's going to be used by those on the front lines, like SOC analysts, those who are analyzing countless alerts daily, being able to cross-reference and enrich alerts that they see with an understanding of, or if they have evidence, and then evidence-based knowledge of the fact that, oh, this IP previously has been a server or has been a host for Russian activity in the past, might want to look into this further, and doing some of that prioritization can also be used by red teamers who are trying to emulate adversary behavior or test an organization security, or for some of the patch management and prioritization there. And then last, I just wanted to talk to you guys about the CTI process lifecycle. So I talked a little bit about intel, cyber intel, dove into the strategic, operational, and tactical levels of CTI, and who uses it, and how you might use it, using the threat profile, threat landscape example. But a nice caveat before I pass it over to Emily is this process lifecycle. So it's important, if you are engaging in a project like the threat landscape for an airport that I talked about on this slide here, that first you understand the life cycle, and try to generally follow these steps in your production. Because if you go to engage in writing a large report, like a threat profile for an airport, you may not know where to begin. And so this is a really just great foundational framework to know and love if you're going to produce any intelligence. So you want to start with understanding your requirements. And earlier when I mentioned understanding who your decision maker is, who's asking the questions, or they may not even be asking questions, but who is the audience and who's going to be reading this product. So that's all a part of it. Understanding what are you required to write on, what is necessary for this, where do you have information, who's going to be reading this, having all of that prepared first, and then moving into the phase of collecting the data that you have and doing your sort of review of your collection requirements. Are these aligned with the intelligence requirements? Does my sources and information, are these in line with what I need to produce? Getting all of that data, sort of aggregating, organizing it, ingesting it, and then comes the analysis piece, where you're actually diving in and collection and processing and analysis. I think you can really go back and forth. You start obviously with your collection, but you may go to the analysis piece where you're diving into your information, and you realize I need a little bit more on X, Y, or Z. And so say you're collecting your information on the TTPs of the actors that go after airports, and then you may think you have it all, and you're kind of combing through all of this information, and then you realize, oh, I really have a gap here. I'm missing some information on Russian actor sets, specifically in this region. So then you may go back and you may have to gather more information from various sources, and then you come back to analysis, and you're combing through all of that data. And then production is when you're putting it all together in a way that is cohesive. You're putting you're sort of, if there is an assessment, airlines are, or X airport is most, the actor that's most likely to target X airport is X actor. I'm not going to say one because I don't want anyone to take this as an actual assessment. And then bottom line up front, you'll hear that bluff. You put your assessment in the front and begin putting together in a cohesive way that makes sense based on your decision maker and who that is. It could be a one pager, especially if it's going to C-suite level executives. It could just be one sentence. Sometimes that's all they want and they won't read any more than that. Or if this is a deep dive, it may be, and that this is going, this is a threat package for a hunt team or a red team that needs a lot of technical data. They need a ton of TTPs. They need a lot of IOCs. It could be a lot longer and you're in that production phase. And then you send it off. And the gray area is dissemination and feedback. I don't know if that's purposely gray, but while dissemination, obviously critical, you send it to them. Feedback is more rare, I would say. It should come always, and you should always ask for it. But just being totally transparent, I would say that it is the one that happens the least. And maybe Emily can free to comment there or not. But yeah, so that is a CTAB process life cycle, and this is not something that you have to check the box as you go through it. But if you decide to work in the cyber threat intelligence industry or the intel community or any organization or even private sector that leverages intel, this is sort of the standard and a really great foundation and knowledge to have to get you started. And now I'm going to kick it over to Emily, who is going to actually talk about some of the models that are leveraged in the industry. Thanks, Emily. Over to you.
Thanks, Caitlin. So you can see all my edits on this slide, but I want to talk to you now about some of the different frameworks and models that Intel analysts use to basically pull all of the data together so that we can basically tell a story. So we're going to talk a little bit about each of these different models that you see on the slide, not only from how we build those out as an intelligence analyst, but also as an intelligence analyst, how I hope that my decision makers are going to use the information that I give them. The first one I want to talk about, though, is the one on this slide, which is called the OODA Loop. And this one is not just a framework where we insert information. This is more of a way of thinking. And to me, it really goes to the heart of why I get out of bed every day, and that is to fight the adversary. So when we look at the OODA Loop, the goal is basically to outmaneuver our adversary in CTI, but this model is also used in national security intelligence and also military intelligence. But we want to move at a higher operational tempo than our adversary, right? We want to be one step ahead of them. So when we apply the OODA Loop to cyber, we are thinking about how we can adapt and react quicker than our adversaries. So basically, how can we observe, orient, decide, and act so that we can basically put ourselves in front of them. So that's why I get out of bed every morning, to try to stay one step ahead of the actor. And that's what OODA Loop explains. If we move on to the next slide, though, please, Caitlin. We're going to look at the pyramid of pain. And I look at this in a couple different ways that I'm going to explain to you. So the first is that as you move up the pyramid, it's going to require your adversary to use more resources to basically fix what you disrupt. So if we look at this from a detection point of view, if you're at the bottom of the pyramid and you're using hash values for detection, hash values are trivial, right? You can go into a file and add a space or a period and you get a whole new hash value. That's not hard to change, and it's like playing whack-a-mole with detection. Not great for intelligence. If we move up to the top of the pyramid of pain, though, and we start looking at TTPs, or tactic, techniques, and procedures, this is how our adversary operates. There's a lot of psychology that goes behind that as well. So if we're able to disrupt at this level of the pyramid of pain, it's now making it a lot harder for our adversary to basically figure out how to, hold on. Sorry, I lost video there for a second, guys. But it basically makes it harder for that adversary to reorganize, to be able to come back and determine how to operate again. If we look at this in another way, though, as a intelligence analyst, I want to operate at the top of the pyramid of pain, right? So it's really not a pyramid of pain to me. It's more of like, what value of information can I provide to my decision makers, whether they're in an incident response team or red team, or maybe security operations center, that can help them better defend against an attack. So I want to operate at the top, right? I want to be looking at their tools, their TTPs. Everything below that is a little bit more trivial or simple or easy to go against. So just kind of a way for you to stack up when you're looking at IOCs or what type of information you would want to gain from your CTI team. Go to the next slide, please, Caitlin. The diamond model. So to me, this one and kind of the next one are both my favorites, but think of the diamond model as a puzzle. And all of the pieces of CTI are going to fit into this puzzle. So as an Intel analyst, I think of my job in twofold. The first is that my job is to put all the pieces of the puzzle together so that I can tell a story. And then that story is what I take to my decision makers. So I take it to the SOC, the IR team, senior executives to be able to tell them what happened, why it happened, and how it happened. So when we look at the diamond model, we're literally laying out all the pieces of information that we have about a campaign, about a compromise, whatever we've got. And then the story moves along the lines of the diamond model. So if we start at the top and we're looking at our adversary and we identify perhaps it is a Chinese espionage actor, we now know that that actor has to have capabilities and infrastructure in order to target a victim. So if we move from the adversary to infrastructure, we look at that as an adversary uses this infrastructure. And now we can lay out all of the infrastructure we identified in our research, which goes back to the pyramid of pain, right? So we can lay all of that out there. If we look at the capability side, we can say the adversary develops capabilities in TTPs. And that's where we can say this is how the actor that we're looking at actually operated in the campaign or the incident that we observed. The line connecting capabilities and infrastructure together, you have to deploy your capabilities via infrastructure, right? So if you're going to leverage a phishing email, which is a capability, you're going to leverage some type of hosting provider, some type of sender email address, some type of maybe compromised infrastructure. So that connects across there. Now, all of that's going to connect down into the victim. So we can say that the infrastructure connects to the victim and the capabilities and the TTPs exploited that victim. And now you've laid across your whole story in one model. So very, very useful model if you're trying to figure out exactly what is happening, put all your puzzle pieces together, and then tell a story. The next slide, Caitlin, please. So I'm going to talk about cyber kill chain and Mitre attack together. They're two different models, but in my mind, they're kind of the same concept. And that concept is, as I talked about with OODA Loop, we want to get steps ahead of our adversary, right? So if we're looking at espionage actors, these individuals show up to work every day, like Caitlin and I do, but their job is to attack us, right? Where our job is to defend against them. So in most cases, these espionage actors are going to work for a nation state or a government, and they're going to be operating off of a standard operating procedure, an SOP. As an Intel analyst, I want to figure out what that SOP is, because if I know exactly what they do in every phase of a compromise or an attack, I can get my incident response team to get one step ahead of them. Or I can tell the red team to go act like this actor and make sure that our defenses are in place from the specific actor set. So that's what these two different models are basically trying to get at. What is this kill chain across? What are all the steps that an actor takes in order to compromise an entity? What do they do once they're inside of that entity? And then how do they get the information out? Or basically, what is the impact of that information? This can be used, as I said, by the IR team, by the red team. You can also use this to basically test your defenses. So one of the ways that I've been working with some of our clients is to basically stack all of the tactics in Mitre attack, which is really becoming the industry standard, and basically say, if I want to defend against, for example, APT41, which is a Chinese espionage actor, what does it look like for the Mitre attack lifecycle for APT41? If I know every TTP that Mandiant has seen, I've got a really good idea of what that actor's SOP looks like. Now, if I know what that actor is going to do in every stage of the attack, let me map my defensive capabilities to the Mitre attack. What can I say we actively and successfully defend against an organization? Now overlay the two. Are there any tactics that APT 41 uses that are not actively or successfully being defended against an organization? And then now you've got the difference, right? Now you can have some action come out of that to go and increase those defenses to make sure APT 41 wouldn't successfully compromise your organization. So with that, those are my little tidbits on those models, but it gives you an idea of how an Intel analyst lays out all of the information and tries to put it together, like I said, into a puzzle or into a story so that we can give actionable information to a decision maker, whether it be an executive, whether it be the IR team or a security operations analyst. You can go to the next slide, Caitlin. So we now have basically looked at all of our sources of information. We evaluate them based on reliability and credibility. And we need to start making judgments, because even though we like to think that we have, for example, the entire SOP for APT 41, for example, there's always going to be holes in that. So because we don't have crystal balls as Intel analysts, even though a lot of people think we do, or we can't see the adversary 100%, we need to caveat basically how we give out our assessments for decision makers. So we caveat those in two ways. One is with a confidence level, and two is with a word of estimated probability. Now, in our communication as Intel analysts, we need to be very specific in what we say, because we expect somebody to take action on it. And based on what I say, I usually mean a very specific action, or I'm only so confident that I'm like, you could do this, but you might want to hold off until we get a little bit more information. So for example, I could make a low confidence assessment and say, it is possible or it's probable that something might happen. But when I say that, I operate at that 75% of certainty. So there is that 25%, right, that is uncertain. So that needs to be taken into what the decision is being made. So if you're consuming cyber threat intelligence and you're reading products, look for these levels of confidence in there. And there are taxonomies like Kent's words of estimated probability that all analysts operate out of. So you can go back and say, oh, now that I'm reading this estimate and somebody is saying that they are certain something is going to happen, they're meaning 100%. So that should give you an idea of what you can do with that information. Same with confidence levels. Confidence levels are always high, medium, or low. And it should be very clearly stated by the analyst that we assess with X confidence that this will happen, or this is likely, or this is unlikely. So just make sure you're very, very clear with your wording, and also very clear with the reading that you're doing of intelligence of how you're consuming it. So it's a very high level overview of kind of the nuts and bolts of some of the examples of how we do intelligence analysis and then produce intelligence reporting. What I wanted to leave you all with today, though, if you go to the next slide, Caitlin, is in my experience, and I've been working in intelligence for over 10 years. I started out in state and local law enforcement, working criminal intelligence, moved into cyber over 8 years ago, been with Mandiant for 5 of those, worked with government mostly the entire time. But in my experience, these are the skills that really will help you if you want to get into the CTI field. And I want to explain a few of them because I think some outweigh others a little bit more. So in my opinion, if you want to be successful in a field of CTI, passion for the job is the #1 thing you've got to have. It not only makes you a better coworker, a better team member, but it's going to give you the ambition and the drive to find an area that you love and become a subject matter expert in that area. So when you start looking at all of the hard skills that are listed above, you do not need to be 100% focused on any one of those, or all of those skills, I should say. You want to find your niche. And the niche is what's really going to help you in CTI, because if you become a subject matter expert on something, for example, I cover Chinese espionage activity, you're going to be the go-to for that information. And then that's how my team is built out. I'm on a team of 7 people. We have complementary skills to each other, but we are not 100% redundant in any of our skill sets. So we can rely on each other to basically fill out all of the areas within CTI that we would need. So we've got somebody who is a SME in threat hunting, someone who is a SME in incident response, someone who has a foreign language skill, etc. but I thought this might be helpful if you're looking of some areas that you might want to go down within CTI specifically. That's the last slide that we prepared. So I want to open it up for questions. If you have anything you want to ask Katelyn or I specifically about our career paths or any questions about CTI.
Thank you both. I'm trying to, okay, I just removed the pins. So we should be able to see everybody. In just a second. Okay. I think if, Katelyn, if you stop the presentation too, then we can show. There we go, perfect. Me, one sec. Okay. It's just spotlighting you, Emily. It likes you. I removed the pin. Well, I really appreciate that, especially when you broke out the skills. I know a lot of times, especially when people are new, you know, one of the things that I always get asked is about certifications too. So I think it is great to, you know, have the passion. And I love how you said dig in and become an expert on something. I think that's great advice, you know, for any career. But if you could, if there are some, you know, what are some resources that you use, educational, free, or even just if there were some certifications that you would recommend, especially for someone starting out?
Sure. So Katelyn and I both have a very similar background. So we have bachelor's degrees in intelligence studies from Mercyhurst University. So if you're looking for anything in regards to intelligence analysis, that's a really good place to go for information on that. They have various different levels, like a bachelor's and master's. I think there's a certificate now too. There is also, NIST has a program called NICE that will give you some of the different career paths that you can go down in associated education and training. That's always helpful. And then SANS is really helpful if you're looking for technical certifications. So when you talk about CTI, you really have to marry the soft skills and the analytical skills with some type of a technical knowledge. So to be able to understand how incident response happens, or be able to analyze net flow data and PCAPs, that's always really helpful to pair the two together. In my opinion and in my experience, the intel analysis piece is always the hardest to learn. Technical, in my experience, again, it's easier to find training for that, but intelligence analysis is a way of thinking. So depending on where your skill sets are, you might want to go one way or another. Do you have any other, Katelyn?
No, I think you covered all the major ones. Yeah, no, you've got it.
And I will say for anyone that's listening to that is not a member of Women in Cybersecurity, so WiCyS, there's a lot of training out there due to the partnerships. I mean, WiCyS organization is partnered with, I think, all of the top organizations that you would associate with cyber. And so we frequently get notifications of free training that's sponsored by Google or SANS. For those that are within the WiCyS membership community. So if you're not a member, I encourage you to sign up. They have a number of different membership packages, which are fantastic. Everything from, you know, $10 annually, I think for veterans maybe. They're really affordable, but they really do give you access to not only just a number of free training out there, there's scholarships, and a lot of organizations really partner with us to make sure that they're providing those avenues for education as well. And even just, you know, they're launching the mentor-mentee program. We did it for the first time last year, and there is another session going. I want to say it's in September. It's kicking off potentially October, but that's fantastic as well. So I would get signed up for that. And there's, I mean, just incredible leaders across the globe that really participate in that. Does anyone else have any other questions for Emily or Katelyn? I did just put their, I put links to their LinkedIn profiles as well, if anyone wants to connect direct.
Yeah, thanks for doing that, Courtney. And if anyone thinks of questions after and you want to just, PM Emily or I'm, more than happy to answer questions. Speaking for Emily, I'm sure she feels the same if the broader forum is not your style.
Awesome. And I see Nicole asked about the session being recorded. Yeah, we are going to, as part of this whole series, set up we have a YouTube channel, so getting everything up there for everyone to access at a later date. And with that too, we do have a number of other training sessions today and then also tomorrow in preparation for our Hack the Airport, Capture the Flag event on Wednesday. So that's exciting. Again, I know it's a work day, but it is go at your own pace. There's some teams. We're going to do a live stream on Twitch as well. So, and that's all levels. So if you're a beginner too, we have some fantastic mentors set up to assist. We've done CTFs in the past, and it's fun. So if you've never done one before, don't be intimidated. And then also for those that are local to the Maryland area, we do have a social for those attending the CTF on Wednesday. It's in person, believe it or not. And I think we even have a weather plan in place. So again, all of that is on the site. I sent it out earlier, but I will send the link again right now in the chat for anyone that wants to register. Let's see, here we go. Okay, great. All right, well, if there's no other questions, I want to thank Emily and Katelyn again. It's always a pleasure to have you guys join us and share your background, the art and science of CTI, especially from your perspective. Yeah. So thank you both.
I see one more question.
Sure.
If we have time for one more question, there's one in the chat about internship job titles that you would start recommending in CTI. So Mandiant does offer internships, and I believe there may be some resources through Women in Cybersecurity as well. I would also recommend looking in your state government. So there's fusion centers within each state that will have a CTI role, and I believe they have some internships via those as well.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I'd also tack on there, if there are any larger companies like the Googles, Microsofts, those type, they have both like online training, they have training through LinkedIn too, both for like the hard and soft skills, going back to the original question. And they may also be good resources just to start, shoot your resume out there as well. And I'm sure that I know they have large internship programs.
Thank you.
All right, great. Well, thank you, everyone. Everyone have a great day, and sign up for the CTF if you haven't done so already.
Hi, Courtney, I had a message for you.
Yes.
I was asking if you could confirm my registration. I've been trying to get a hold of Rosemary and a couple of other WiCyS-CIC members just to find out if my registration went through.
Okay, yeah, you'll do that through the main WiCyS website. So when you sign up, you just designate the affiliate that you're associated with. But if you want to, I'll send you my, shoot me a message.
Okay.
Let's see. Give me 1 second. And they also do have a COVID membership for anybody that may be out of work as well. That's highly discounted. So it's a great way to network, but so many success stories there. I just shot you, connect with me, send me a message on LinkedIn. I would say my email, but my email is becoming quite the crazy place these days.
Okay.
So I'm just being honest. Yeah, shoot me a message and then we'll get you connected and make sure that you get taken care of. So
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you all. Thanks so much.
Thank you guys. Bye.
Bye.